Well, hey, welcome to the Longbox Punk. I am Chris. You can find me at I'm Crystal everywhere. Thanks for tuning in with my very first interview with Jay. Jay, thanks, dude. Thanks so much for joining me, coming on to my show and giving me just a very beginner's interview as I'm getting this thing off the ground. Appreciate it.
Hey, no, not a problem. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I would love for you to kind of tell us and tell me, like, so you're a writer and you've got a current campaign on Kickstarter right now. How did you get into like writing comics? How did that start?
Oh man, I mean, it's probably kind of a boring answer, but I feel like I've always just loved writing stories.
Okay.
I can remember, I've always loved horror stories. I
Yep.
mean, especially things for kids. I grew up in the heyday of like Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Not only the books, but the show and everything like that. Um, and then I was that kid that God, I loved horror movies. I would beg to go to Blockbuster and all that
Mhm.
stuff, and
Yep.
that's the section I would always be in. But then I'd always be terrified when I watched the movies. But I loved it. It was like an adrenaline, like, oh, I gotta have more.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, I even remember um, an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark with like a haunted typewriter. And so,
Yes.
like, I remember like looking through my closet at my parents' office and finding like an old typewriter. It's like I got it out, like was like I'm typing stories on it,
Yeah.
and so there was no more ink in it. And then yeah, throughout that, I mean, high school, English was always one of my favorite classes, creative writing class.
Hmm.
Um, and then as for comics, I mean, I've always just been big comic nerd.
Yeah.
Always read Spider Man, Batman, some
Yep.
Captain America, things like that, and as I got older, I was like, oh, I have ideas. I want to write them, and just wrote different scripts and things like that. And I don't know. I just haven't stopped.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
when you started writing, did you like automatically know like this is a comic idea, or did you start with like prose and then work your way into comics? Like why comics?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I always started with prose. I also did a lot of scripts for student films because I
Okay.
went my undergrads in communication.
Okay.
And then I got into a group of friends that were like, a lot of big filmmakers. Um, One of my buddies was very much kind of a writer director, but very much the director. We had
Yeah.
other guys that were very much the producer, and then I kind of wrote, was one of the writers, I guess.
Okay.
Um, and I think just as I got past college and going things, I loved comics, but it was kind of like, well, making a film is very expensive.
Right.
Not to say that making comic isn't expensive, because I can
Right.
promise you that it is, but I think relative, it's a lot cheaper than making a
Sure.
film. So just kind of wrote things I thought would be cool, as comic strips, and always kind of played around with them. And then I think, I always had this grand idea. I mean, I'm sure every writer does, but this idea, I'm like, oh man, I have a story that's like 20 issues long,
Yeah.
15 issues long, 30 issues long. Yeah, everybody's gonna love this idea. And as we know, I feel like the runs of comics have gotten lower and lower.
Yeah.
And for good reason. Sometimes it's just a small 4 or 5 issue, 6 issue story is perfect.
Right. Right.
Other ones warrant having a big long run time, or issue run, I should say, not run time.
Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, but then I found like, one, it's expensive. If I'm a new writer, who's going to sit there and say, hey, here's a lot of money, go out there and make 30 issues of something.
Yeah.
um, so then I finally kind of took the suggestion I had from a lot of people, is start small.
Sure.
And funny enough, Together Forever, which is my current Kickstarter, but
Mhm.
it actually started, was the first script I wrote, 3 pages.
Okay.
um, I put it out on Twitter, like, hey, who wants to work on this with me? um, got the response from Jeremiah Sheep, who did the art on the original 3 page story.
Yeah.
um, had it made, and was like, all right, cool, I have the story made. Sorry, my dog's just up. He's not supposed to. But then I had a story, or had that made, and I was like, all right, what do we do with it from here?
Right.
I was like, on to the next story. But when I was talking with Jay, he kind of reached out to me. He's like, hey, I've done some work for this site called Hyper Epics. It's a really cool site. People haven't heard of it, but their whole thing is they're all 3-page comics.
Oh, cool.
But they also will do a soundtrack to your comic for you.
That's
like
rad.
when it's on there. So yeah, it's pretty cool site. But he was like, hey, I've done some work. I want to show them the story. I'm like, sure, they're not going to want it, but you show whoever you want.
Go for it.
I'm thinking like, hey, I made something. Who's going to want it? And I think even the next day, he's like, oh, hey, they loved it. They want to put it up on the site. And I was like, oh,
sweet,
cool, okay, awesome. So yeah, so they did that, and they liked what we did, and I think they kind of commissioned me and Jay to do a couple more, short stories for them, and then I've just kind of taken my time to kind of build from there.
Sure.
Yeah, do different stories, kind of build bigger each time.
That's cool. Yeah, so when I've always had the ideas. I'm similar to you. I've always been like, I just write all the time. And sometimes it was like journaling, and then sometimes it was like, well, this is kind of like a story, but then I would get hung up in the details and it would just kind of die because I was getting like Tolkien level, like, the grains in the field. And it was just like, this is just bad. So I kind of like stopped all of that. And I went to a local con actually in Highland Heights on the campus of NKU at Northern Kentucky, which is where I graduated from. And one of the guys I graduated from was there, and he was like, hey, I know you have ideas. We've talked comics a lot. He works for a publisher now as an editor and a letterer, and is still doing smaller projects too. And he was like, just start writing, but like start small. Like you said, start with like a 2, 3, 4-page thing. Don't try and do this massive, like, collected omnibus of everything, start small. And so I was talking to some friends and my dad about it, and I was like, hey, he said like start small. And my dad goes, he's probably wanting you, who was an English teacher and a writer and like as a published author and all the things. And so naturally I went to him first, like, Dad, you said I should just write. Should I just write? Is it that easy? And he was like, well, not really. But if you're intentional with like a 3 to 4-page story, you have to be intentional with the story that you're telling. Like, you can't rely on a lot of fluff. And so as I have been writing, I honestly feel like it's a challenge to write that short. Like, was the 3-pager for you just kind of like here's the idea, and by the time you fleshed it out, it was done? Or did you start with like way more and then have to pare it down for that 3-page like final story?
So yes and no. So originally I always had this idea of what Together Forever started in my head. And it definitely evolved even from what I originally thought to the original 3-page story.
Okay.
But with that, I think it was more of it was a necessity to fit it into 3 pages because of I had no money really to make it.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? I was like, you think, oh, hey, $300 to get this all done versus, however much. So that was kind of a big reason, constriction on myself. But I do, like, I've written multiple 3-page, stories for Hyper Epics. My first book that I kickstarted about 2 years now, Morsels, was actually kind of a collection of, 8 of my short horror stories that I've done. And some of them, a couple of them are 3 pages, 4 pages. I think the most was like 11 pages. So anywhere in between there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, each time it's tough, to think, okay, what you really have to sit down and think, what is necessary for this story? Yeah. What can I cut? What can I cut out that, doesn't affect, and what do I absolutely have to have in there? I also, and I think some of it is from doing a lot of like student films and just watching movies. But like, I sometimes get too hung up on like, okay, you've got to see the person go from point A and go over to point B and such. Whereas in comics, it's like, okay, they can start at point A, cut away, point C, like, so then you just kind of fill it in like, oh, okay, they walked from, A to C and so on and so forth, or other things like that. So I probably sometimes was a little too lengthy with, where I moved my characters, how many panels I was using.
Sure.
Um, so that was kind of an adjustment, but yeah, it's always a fun exercise. I would say any writer, any
Yeah.
level, it's just a fun exercise to try and like, okay, how can I tell a complete story in 3 pages, 4 pages,
Yeah.
5 pages?
Yep. So how did your partnership, it's Jeremiah, right? The artist.
Yeah.
How did you find him? Like, is that somebody that you already knew?
No, it's funny. No, he came up. Like I said, I just posted on Twitter,
Okay.
and this is probably about 5, 6 years now
Okay.
that I originally did that story. No, I just posted up on Twitter. Hey, anybody want? Are there any artists out there that want to team up on this 3-page story? This is kind of the basic idea.
Yeah.
He was one of the guys who responded.
That's crazy.
Just looking at his portfolio, he had done some pages for Rocketeer that he still shows today because
That's
they're
cool.
fantastic pages. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
really cool. And I was like, all right, I want to work with this guy. We kind of chatted, both kind of had similar sensibilities. Love of kind of horror and anthologies like Tales from the Crypt, Creep Show, and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I think he just had a lot of fun, and he said he liked the script, and like I said, we did the story and kind of went from there. And
That's awesome.
like I said, we've done multiple shorts with Hyper Epics, and then this is our first time kind of getting. It's been a little while getting back together because he's worked on other projects. I've worked
Sure.
with artists on other projects and such, and so yeah, I kind of had this idea for Together Forever, and what I'm excited about is that obviously it expands on the story, kind of reimagines it, but also I feel like kind of still has the same gut punch in the end
Cool.
that I think a lot of readers will like. So
That's cool. Yeah. So let's talk about Together Forever live on Kickstarter. So you said it's an expanded story. How long did you end up teasing it out to?
so the book itself is 27 pages. So
Okay.
that's what the story is. The plan for the book itself, though, will include the new story, and it will actually have the original 3-page short in it as
Cool.
well.
So 30
Um,
page.
yeah. So the book
Cool.
so the book will end up being about 30 32 pages long.
Okay. That's cool. And yeah, so when I was looking at your Kickstarter, which I'm going to have linked in the description thing below. I hate saying all the things that everybody says on YouTube. But if you go in the description, I'm going to have it linked there so you can get directly to the Kickstarter. And I happen to have it put up here. So you have, you're already at 40, you're sitting as of right now, the recording, you've got 47 backers. We got 27 days to go, and you've got a $4,200 goal, which is super rad. Like, to be close to that 50 backer mark, I can only imagine would be like, that feels like a milestone, right? Like that feels like a big deal.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's funny. I keep this is just my anxiety in me and stuff like that, but I feel like I'm sitting here and I'm like, it doesn't matter how much you prepare yourself, you're still always like clicking refresh.
Yeah.
But and I feel like I've probably annoyed everybody that follows me or my friends on Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I apologize for that. But yeah, no, I feel good because I sit here and I'm like, oh, I feel like there's such a huge mountain to get up and this and that. But then I'm like, hey, I'm almost to 50 backers and it's only been 3 days. I mean,
Yeah.
a little about 30% of the goal. So there's still time. There's some things I have planned to kind of do to kind of bring people in. So I think it's definitely a very doable goal.
That's cool. And that, for those that don't know, so I'm a huge Kickstarter fan. I think last year they emailed me like, "Hey, you've officially reached super backer status," and I was like, "Can you not tell the wife? Like, she doesn't need to know this."
I actually just got that recently too.
So, I was like, "Yay!" I know my wallet is hurting and my shelves are all bowing, but I literally have like stacks of comics all over the place right now. So if you know anybody that builds shelves that's in the Midwest, you send them my way. Because I need something. This is not a doable thing. So Kickstarter, so usually I feel like I've only ever seen like 30-day campaigns,
Hmm.
maybe like one shorter sprint, but usually they're 30 days. You have a goal. It's all like crowdfunding, right? And then you've got different reward tiers that you can support that determine like what your what the final product that you're receiving is going to be. So when I backed your project, I wanted to get the physical book because I like the feel of a comic in my hands. Like I'm slowly coming around to digital comics just because it's so freaking convenient, right? Like it's
Yeah.
so easy to read a digital comic and just tear through, but then I don't have anything to like hold. And when I'm done, I'm like, well, it's somewhere, it's in the cloud again, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but I also I wanted to get the morsels as well to find out like what else you've written. So if you don't mind, what can I expect with morsels? You said you wrote all of the tales that are in that book.
I did, yes. I
Okay,
wrote all 8 stories. Worked with 8 different artists.
cool,
So every story is a different artist. Yeah.
nice.
And really, it kind of started off as, I had a bunch of these shorts that I did with people, and I'm kind of like, what do I do with them? So I kind of
Yeah,
had this idea to do kind of collective work. It's almost like a fun way to kind of get a resume to put out there,
yeah,
but yeah, there's a variety. I mean, there's kaiju, there's werewolves, there's oh man, what else is in there? It's been a while since I've read it. um, got a fun story it's very kind of Goonies and It. It's got like
okay,
a fun '80s kind of nostalgia feel to it.
nice.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's just it's so different. And I feel like a lot of them are very creep show, Tales from the Crypt, kind of like the dark
Yeah,
humor in them. That's just what I find myself, writing. It's what I
yeah.
enjoy. Um, so yeah, so I think you're in for a good time. That's what I would
Cool.
say you're definitely in for.
I mean, if it's horror, especially if there's kaiju, like that's I'm in. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm in. Just take all my money, Jay. It's fine. Just don't
Hey,
again.
why
Just
not?
don't tell my wife.
Yeah.
She's gonna watch
Well,
this
that
later and be
and
like,
well, in that story, the original concept I think I came up with, and it kind of evolved into something else. But the original pitch to the artist they were doing, because he came to me and was like, "Hey, let's do something." I was like, "All right, I have this idea for like Godzilla meets Sleepless in Seattle."
awesome.
So, and it kind of, in a strange way, became more of a Godzilla slash Carrie
Okay.
slash Sleepless in Seattle. But
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Because of
just
course those go together.
of course, why not?
Yeah. That's awesome. So with the Together Forever 3-pager, with it
Hmm.
being on what was the website again? I'm sorry.
So it's on. I believe it's still up there. It's been a while since I looked at it. It was
Hyper Epics. Okay.
hyperepics.com. Yep,
Okay.
that's where
And
it was originally published.
so you mentioned that they have soundtracks that go along with the stories. How does that
Hmm.
work? Like, is that original music? Is that like, no, this one song by Rancid like really just captures everything, and so that's
No, they're all original stuff. I think they have
okay.
a guy that is like assuming a music guy, composer, possibly, but he handles all that.
Okay.
And so I think what they do is they kind of like, we send in the story. I think they probably kind of read through it to kind of get the flow of it, and then they just
Yep.
kind of write like a little piece that goes with it,
That's cool.
um, to try and try and match up with it and things like that.
Nice. So
So yeah.
speaking of music, I would be remiss as the Long Box Punk if we didn't also talk about music. So being a horror person, um, which I want to ask you more about too, to see because a lot of what you were talking about like just lines up with a lot of what I experienced as well. So like what when you're writing, are you listening to music as you write? Or are you like I just have to have everything silent so that I can just focus and get in my zone? Um, And like, I guess, what role does music play in your writing process?
Yeah, I mean, I think music is fairly big to me in my process. Some writers I've met, it's probably bigger in theirs than it is in mine because sometimes I do. Sometimes for me to focus, I just need to kind of turn everything off and like,
Got it.
okay, let's focus. Um, but then other times, what I really like is I am a big collector of movie soundtracks on vinyl.
Okay.
Um, so I've got a nice little collection going. So I even like to pick out a certain movie and put it on, or one that I have from a TV show,
Yeah.
um, or even just what I'm streaming. But I feel like definitely stuff without words, because sometimes I feel
Yeah.
like maybe it's my ADHD mind, but I feel like when I start hearing like people like saying things, it's almost like I can't pay attention to what I'm writing. Like it almost all jumbles up
Yeah.
somehow.
Yep.
Uh, but movie soundtracks,
Okay.
especially horror and things like that, are ones
To
I
say,
like to
are
pop
they
on and listen
horror
to.
specifically? Like, do you find yourself, if
Uh,
you're writing, like when you wrote the 80s, like the 80s tale, were you listening to like the Adventures in Babysitting soundtrack, like that, some like 80s, I don't know why that's the movie that came to mind, but like, do you find that you're listening to soundtracks that match the feel that you're going for in the tale that you're writing, or is it just like, I'm in a mood to listen to this, so I'm going to put this soundtrack on, and then whatever ends up falling out of my brain is what's on the paper?
yeah, I'd say a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think there are some that I kind of have maybe the idea and the flow of what I want, so I put on something that kind of matches that.
Yeah.
Other times I'm just kind of flipping through. I'm like, I haven't listened to that in a while. Let's put that on. That sounds good. Um, but I'd say probably, I mean, some of the ones that probably get the most play, and a lot of it, I think John Carpenter seems to kind of get me in the mood because,
Yeah.
Halloween, I've got The Thing, and multiple stuff like that.
And
Creep
those are
Show, I do
so
have the Creep
like,
Show from Waxwork Records.
those are so atmospheric too. Like, I feel like listening to it, like, take The Thing, that that movie wouldn't have been as impactful if not for the score. And like,
Oh
this is
yeah.
getting into like a really weird, I'm a cinephile too, specifically with horror. Like, I put together a horror movie list
Mhm.
from like starting in like July and August, and I start watching in August, and I watch nothing but horror August, September, and then like almost every day in October that I can, without making my wife sick of them. But I found this weird list on, I think, a subreddit or something. I don't even read it. God, that sounds pretentious. But I put together this list, and then every year I find like I'm adding different categories of movies. So it's like a killer inanimate object. And so like last year I watched Chucky, and then like there's one that like takes place at a body of water. So I watched Lake Mungo. And so I've got a whole bunch of different stuff. And then like every decade, I like going through the decades to see, because it's definitely changed. And so I want to move into kind of the horror aspect, because you said that you like grew up watching it. So like, do you remember the first horror movie that you ever watched?
Whew. God, that is a tough one. Probably the few that I really remember. Halloween was always one of my favorite, and still one of my favorite.
Yep.
I know that's probably a boring answer, but like
No,
Nightmare
it's,
on Elm Street.
yep.
Um, I and still to this day, and even when I was a kid, I'm a huge fan of the werewolf subgenre.
Okay. Yep.
Um, which it's hard to find a good werewolf movie,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I was a sucker for all of those. And I just loved going to. I mean, like any kid, person my age. Going to Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, just
Yep.
going through, looking at like the VHS art, would always kind of pull
Yeah.
me in. Um, that was kind of a way that I picked horror movies. And the funniest thing that I have, and maybe this shows, just in America and the mindset of people, but what was so funny is my mom was fairly open about what I watched.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like I handled everything fairly well. But the funniest thing was ever is I would take her a movie and I'd be like, hey, what about this? And she'd look at it and like, oh, I think I saw this. She's like, all right, there's no nudity in it.
Yeah.
So you can watch it. I mean,
Yeah.
so no questions about, teenagers getting, cut up and maimed
Right.
and murdered and everything like
Right.
that. As long as I didn't see boobs.
My mom had a
I
very
mean,
similar bar.
yeah. Well, and maybe it was that time, and I don't, no fault here. It's just now as an adult, I look at them like that. Okay, I mean that's an
Yeah.
interesting, bar
Yep.
to hold or
Yep.
restriction, but whatever. And I think I would too. I'd look at the back and I'm like, okay, rated R for no nudity. Okay, this isn't enough
Yep.
nudity. Can I watch it?
Yeah. Graphic violence, that's okay. Gore doesn't matter. Suicidal tendencies, that's fine. Ooh, there's partial nudity. I don't know if I'm gonna sneak this
Yeah.
by my mom.
Yeah. Let me just put my thumb over that way.
Yeah, I'll just can I see this one? Don't look at the it's fine. Just
And I also I can remember being so excited because I have an older brother. He's like 5 years older than me. So then obviously, in the heyday of, mid 90s and things like that, when like Scream and Blair Witch Project, like things I didn't see. So like I got to see him through him.
Yeah.
And I still remember being so excited because he got the Scream VHS for Christmas one year.
Nice.
And it was just that awesome, like blue face that
Yeah.
was supposed to be Courtney Cox, maybe, but didn't quite look like Courtney Cox. I don't know. They had a few of those, covers.
Yeah.
But just the blue face and Scream across it. Oh my God. I was like, can I watch this? I want to watch it. It's so awesome.
Yeah. And as the older brother, he's like, go away.
Probably. He's like, oh God, yeah, just leave me alone. But
fine. Yeah, we can watch it. So I started the first it was a double, like they used to do classic horror movies on like some generic non-cable station that my nana had at her house, and she was like cleaning the walls or something that I was like, I don't understand what you're doing, and now I'm like, hey babe, it's time to clean the walls. So it's really come full circle for me. But they did a Hitchcock double feature, and I watched The Birds followed by Psycho. And my dad sat down during Psycho with me and watched it with me, and I was just like, this can be like this can be a movie. And it just like those were the two movies for me that just changed, because up until then I was watching like Oliver and Company and like the Mr. Bean movie and all of like the movies for kids. And then I watched these black and white just like masterful thrillers that I just like held on to and have always tried to recapture that, like, this is what a movie can be feel. And it wasn't until like junior high that I was over at my buddy's house and he was like, hey, I have this movie called Evil Dead. Do you want to watch it? And I was like, yeah, I do. Yeah. And like, so that was my first like modern horror, and by modern like 80s that I watched, and I was like, this is gross, like that's raspberry jam. And it just was like those, like that was the franchise that hooked me. And then naturally we had to go play some like 16-bit video game because we were both just like shaken to our core of like, that's so terrifying. Don't go in the woods. And of course he has woods in his backyard, and it was a mess.
What's actually awesome is I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get to meet him? You were just at Horror Hound, right?
Yeah, I did. I mean, obviously it was very short because it's a long line and they just kind of push you through, but it was still really awesome. I mean, he's just very quiet. Hey, how you doing? And whether it ended up in the trash or somewhere else, but like I had like actually took like a copy of Morsels. I was like, I write. Like, I just want to give you this. And he's like, oh, hey, I mean, he's cool. I mean, he's really cool about it. He's like, oh, hey, thanks. He goes, yeah, you know what it takes to get things done. And, this is a big thing. He's like, congratulations to you. And I'm like, thanks. Yeah.
Sam Raimi just said congrats to me. That's cool.
But yeah, but meeting Sam Raimi, yeah, it was so awesome. Because, I mean, Evil Dead series, Ashford versus the Evil Dead, Drag Me to Hell.
Yes.
Like, I love Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah.
And it was one the first time I saw it. I don't know if it was because I just had such high expectations for Sam Raimi coming back to horror.
Yeah.
but I watched it and I was like, that was okay. Like I had to watch it again and I'm like, oh wait, no, never mind. I'm crazy. This is just awesome.
I was having an off day.
like,
Clearly, this movie's
yeah,
incredible.
everything about it. I mean,
Yeah.
oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm still a huge. So this is my laser disc of Army of Darkness that Bruce Campbell signed.
Oh,
Um, and he was doing a book signing, and like you could bring an item for him to sign, or you could have him sign the book. And I was like, well, I'm like, I have this laser disc. I need to have him sign it. And so I walked up and I put it down, and I was like, man, thanks for your. And he was like, is this a laser disc? I was like, yeah. Yeah, it is. He was like, I've never signed a laser disc before. This is awesome. And I was like, seriously?
Okay, so I have to ask you,
Yeah.
since you had one, did you buy it just for that, or did you have a Laserdisc player? Because what baffles my mind
Yeah.
somehow is, and especially recently, I've been going in, like I always go into half price books and like things like that to look for like soundtracks and things to pick up. But for whatever reason, my local one has had a ton of laser discs all of a sudden.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't think I ever met anyone ever that had a laserdisc player.
Yeah.
I've seen laserdiscs. Obviously, something existed,
Right.
but in my mind, it was VHS, and then this technology, and then real quick to DVD.
Yeah. That's basically how it went. Yeah.
Never knew anybody with a laserdisc player. I've never seen one work. I've never it's just it baffles my mind.
Yeah. So true confessions, I didn't have a laserdisc player. My brother-in-law gave me the laser. He probably found it at a half price books. But he had a laserdisc player. And so like we used to watch, oh shoot, I knew I was going to drop it. It was, it's the horror movie where they're in the jungle, Congo.
Predator? Oh, Congo. Okay.
Maybe, I don't know. It was some like thriller set in the deep jungle. So like halfway through the movie, it would be like flip disc over, and you had to like take the huge disc out and flip it and put it back in like a record, but it looked like a giant like record size CD. And so he like found that and gave that to me. He actually still has the laser disc. That's just the like sleeve for the movie.
Nice.
Because he knows that I'm a fan.
Was the quality good? Was the quality good, or?
I guess it was good. He would always argue that it was better than DVDs, but DVDs were more convenient because you could pack more data onto the disc. And so that's why DVDs won instead of Laserdisc. And then, so I used to work at Hollywood Video when like the Blu-ray and HD movies were a thing.
I remember that fight. Yeah.
Yeah, where like the HD movies are in the like maroon cases and then all the Blu-rays were blue. The reason that we have Blu-ray instead of HD is because Blu-ray signed a contract with Disney. And so once they had the rights to put all of the Disney movies on Blu-ray, HD couldn't keep up because they only had like Paramount and like maybe Sony, and like the Blu-ray just were locking down contract after contract after contract. And so that's why we ended up with Blu-ray instead of HD. But like you needed a separate HD player for the HD discs, which was like, why? Like, why should I, like the people that would buy both, like, oh, one of them's going to win, so I'll just buy an HD and a Blu-ray. It's like, you're insane. Like, what would you do? And even before, before VHS, there were beta tapes, which were slightly smaller than VHS tapes. And we had a beta player, and like a lot of our home videos are on beta, and it's like, we don't even have a beta player. And like, how do I get that off to like watch those home videos when I was like 2? But yeah, so it's always in flux. And now we're getting 4K, and I'm sure soon we're going to have 74K, and it's just going to continue to change. And it's the industrial machine.
No, that's awesome.
I'm going to get on a weird soapbox if you don't stop me.
No, you're fine. It's just one of those. It's just one of those things. It's always like, and somehow in my head it feels like it was just this weird practical joke that somebody's playing on me, because it's like I just never ran into anybody that had one.
Yeah,
I've never seen one, but obviously, like I said, I've seen Laserdiscs, so I know they exist.
Right. It was a thing.
Yeah.
So back to comics. So other
Mhm.
than Together Forever, like that's your current Kickstarter. Are you already, is it that like all of your focus on that, or do you like also have something else that you're working on that you might be able to hint at now for things to come?
No, yes, I do have something else that I'm working on. My Yes, my plan is Colleen Palmer is the artist that I'm working with.
Okay.
And we're in like the early stages. Like we just kind of met recently to discuss kind of monster designs and kind of what I was
Oh,
thinking, her
cool.
thoughts and stuff like that. So that's still pretty early. But like I do have this idea. Um, like I've always been a big Stephen King fan too. You got Castle Rock. You got another one that I used to love as a kid, Erie, Indiana. So I love this idea of just having this town that's
Hmm.
like maybe inherently evil. There's something off about it. And
Yeah.
so my plan is, if it goes well, is to have a couple one shots that obviously can hope all stand on their own, but we'll kind of have a certain through line through each
Okay.
of them. So they're all going to be set in this town. And so the hope is to kickstart the first book of that later this year. So
Cool. So people
yeah.
should be following you so that they can be in touch with all of the things that you have coming. How do they find you on social media? Or like, do you have a website? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, I have a website. That probably the easiest way is to find one of my social media and go to the link, because I don't have like the main domain yet that I should, simple domain.
Great.
But no, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Both of them at the same handle. It's just J Michael Donohue. Um, I'm also on, I think, Threads, which is the same, and then
Yep.
actually on I forgot, what is it, Blue Sky
Blue Sky.
as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
tried Blue
I'm all
Sky.
on.
You're doing all the things. You were just like, I don't need one. Why? No, I'll just take
Yeah,
seven, please.
it's one of those things where it's almost like you said with the Blu-ray and the HD-ray. Hey, let's just get them all and see who wins out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so because it's always, for a while there, everybody's like, let's jump shark of Twitter.
Yep.
It's just, it's hard because it's one of the better ones, but that's not
Yeah.
great. It's still not great of helping like get the word out there, and I think kind of connecting with people.
Right.
And some of it's hard to give up because as much of a cesspool social media in general has become,
Yeah.
there's still a lot of bright spots. I mean, there's
Mhm.
a ton of creators that are friends of mine, are buddies of mine now that I love talking to, that like I've all met through, Twitter or Instagram or
Yeah.
things like that. I mean, shoot, I mean, like I said, Jeremiah, I mean, I met him through Twitter.
Yeah.
And then we become, friends through that. So yeah, so I think that's just it's definitely had its bright spots, I will say.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree that the like everybody jumping ship from Twitter, and I did the same thing, and I was like, all right, well, like what else is there? So like Blue Sky's a thing because I have a bunch of comic contacts on Twitter that I've made over
Mhm.
the past 74 years or however long I've been on there. And so I was like, they kept posting like, hey, come to the Bluer Skies. And so I joined there, but then when I was there, like there was no, it didn't have the communal feel for me. And I don't know if I just didn't give it enough of a college try to get there. And so I was like, well, what
Yeah.
else is there? And then like Threads dropped. And so I jumped on Threads, and that felt very, it feels somebody put in Threads, like every time I open this app, it feels like I'm opening a group text and I get to see what all my friends have been doing. And I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Like, yes, that's my experience so far on Threads. Um,
Yeah.
which has been super cool. Like I've connected with a bunch of people that have been encouraging with like getting the show off the ground and all of those things. But like I'm also on Slasher, which is like a horror specific social media that's basically like Twitter,
Oh.
because all of them are basically like Twitter, but it's only in app form. Like there is no like website that you can go to. It's just like, hey, download our app and then you can get in. and that's real fun because everyone's like, I just want to see what other people are watching, and like, let's just talk about horror movies. And there's some like,
I'll have to check them out.
there's some movies on there that I'm like, how did you find this? And they're like holding Blu-ray copies of it. And I'm like, did you import that from somewhere? Like, what do you do? I don't even understand.
Oh,
But yeah,
there's that's I'll have to check them out because I would probably spend way too much time on there.
Right,
So that's
yeah,
just what I need is more of a
You're
time suck
welcome.
in my life. But that's, I will say, that's one of the bright spots of social media. I was just talking with Colleen the other night, and you talked to me earlier about what's one of my earliest or my favorite horror movies, and I remember as a kid is the Monster Squad.
Yeah.
Is probably still one of my favorite horror movies. My wife probably hates it now because I'll just put it on in the background when working or put it on something. And she's like, "What do you watch?" She's like, "Oh, you're watching Monster Squad again."
It's the Squad. Got it.
Yeah. But I remember feeling, God, like, and I'm probably being a little dramatic with this, but feeling alone when I was a kid because one, like, I could only see that movie every once in a while because what my kids will never understand is like having a book that came to me that told me when a show was going to be on. So then I had to wait for it. Wait for it. Yeah. But if you missed it, it's gone.
It's gone.
You have to wait. Yeah.
Yep.
And you're like, no. But I remember watching on HBO all the time when it was on. I finally got it on VHS at one point because my mom's friend, bless her heart, she's awesome. She was like, "Oh, I was in this video store. It was like a mom and pop place, and they had a copy of Monster Squad because I couldn't find it any Blockbusters, so I couldn't find it anywhere." And I was like, so I did the wrong thing, and I totally copied that on a VHS just so I could watch it forever.
Yep.
But like anybody I talked to, no one ever heard of that movie ever, all through my childhood.
Yeah.
College, I found a few people, but I was I was in college. 25th anniversary came out. They finally releasing it on DVD, which I still have this DVD. And I'm a big enough nerd. Sometimes you think where you hear people going out at midnight to get it because you don't want it to run out.
Yeah.
And I went out to Walmart at midnight, and I'm waiting like 10 minutes before. And finally, it's midnight, and I'm like, "Where are they going to put it? Here's the spot. It's empty." And the guy comes out. I'm like, no one else is there.
Right.
No one
You're just
cares.
eaggerly
no
like,
movie. Oh yeah. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I got my copy. Like went home and I'm like, yeah. I mean, I was like giddy from the opening moments of just, that scroll that comes up and just they blew it. And then from there, I'm just like, yeah, this is awesome.
That's great.
Oh yeah. I missed it. I missed it on Blu-ray. But I do have the 4K. Like as soon as I saw this past year came out on 4K, I was like, "Oh, sold."
Yep,
pre-order.
Done.
Mine.
Done. Here's my money.
Yeah. Yes, cool. I'm gonna see Horace kick Wolfman in the nards in 4K. Yes,
it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Yep, I get it. I think I have a copy of Army of Darkness, like VHS, and it's the collector with the special like plastic oversized box that I have, and then I've got it on DVD. I think I have 2 DVD copies because one came in like a special sleeve. And I was like, "That's awesome! It looks like the Necronomicon," and so I bought that. And then, but it wasn't widescreen; it was like letterboxed. So I was like, "Well, that sucks." So I got to get I have to get the widescreen, but I'm not going to get rid of the other one. And so I have like 4 copies of that movie in just every different format.
Oh yeah, the biggest thing that and I don't know why this is. If it was, I know now, you get into certain different companies like distributing movies versus old ones, but like I have I can't see it up there, but it's like a special box set, but it's all the Evil Dead, or it's Evil Dead 2, like the 4K and everything like that. I think there's like a documentary, and then it's the whole series of Ash versus the Evil Dead, but it doesn't have Army of Darkness.
What?
Like Army of Darkness wasn't part of it. Yeah, and I'm like, why?
Guys, that's
like, just
basically Evil Dead
it's Army
3.
of Darkness. I mean, it is Evil Dead 3, yeah. But I just didn't know. Like, yeah, no, they came out the sweet Steelbook, which I have of it, so I have the full set. But it just was weird that wouldn't be part of the Evil Dead franchise.
Right. Yeah, especially if they've
So,
got Ash versus Evil Dead in there. Like,
yeah, it's the whole series. Yeah.
come on. That's a miss. That's a miss.
Yeah.
Well, I am sure that we could talk horror movies just like all day because there's so many. I will ask though, if you had to pick like one favorite horror movie or like top three, I'll give you top three. What would your top three horror movies be?
Mm. Are you
Monster
going
Squad three
best
times.
made, or are we going rewatch? Yeah, are we going rewatchability as part of it?
Either. Any, however, like if you were like, hey, these are the movies for me that I just love, I could watch them all the time, I have watched them all the time, like what are those three movies for you?
Probably have to say, probably have to go Halloween. Probably have to maybe say The Shining.
Okay.
Let's go. Oh God, I wanted to. Let's go Poltergeist. I
Okay.
wanted to say Alien, but I think I mean Poltergeist just kind of has a little bit more of a sentimental connection for me. So
Nice. I mean, those
yeah,
are three solid, like just solid horror movies. I think
yeah.
if you ask,
Well, and what I'm really excited about is my sons are getting to the age where I'm starting to kind of show them horror movies, and
yeah.
so I've had my heart broken a few times because like I showed them Monster Squad, and at the end they were like, "Yeah, it's pretty good." I'm like, "Pretty good? What the hell are you talking about?"
I went to Walmart at midnight for this.
Do you know what I went through? No.
Did you do the lines?
I've shown him We've done Poltergeist.
Mm-hmm.
He actually did the first Conjuring
Okay.
because we were kind of tempting him. He took them all really well. The next one I'm excited about is Alien because I want to see his face with the chest burster scene.
Yeah.
I'm having no idea what that is. Oh my gosh, because he Poltergeist for the most part he took it all really well except for the face ripping scene.
Yeah.
When the guy's looking in the mirror, and as soon as he just goes, oh, I'm like, oh god. Nothing else. He was fine with just about everything else, but that was the one that he was like, oh god.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it'll leave that scene will leave. That's like the like spinning head in The Exorcist. You know, when she spins around and just starts vomiting everywhere. Like certain moments in certain movies just stick with you. For me, I always go back to The Descent. Which for a lot of like the deep rooted horror people, they're like, really nothing from the 80s? And like, no, like The Descent. It just like it's so good. It's so claustrophobic the way because again,
see that?
Like I'm a media cinephile. Like my degree is in broadcasting. I took media aesthetics. I did all this stuff, and like just the framing of them spelunking and then making it even tighter with the framing of like using the scene to build that tension makes you feel tense even when they're just like walking through caves. And it just is like it's so and then the monster reveal and the girl coming out of the blood is one of those like that will forever be in my brain of the first time I saw it where I was just like, oh my god, and like no one else in the theater was like, yeah, she's coming, like big deal. And I was like, you don't understand. I love that movie.
That is, I will say, I'm sad to say it's one of my blind spots, but I think a big reason is not because I'm against watching it. Like, I know the quality of it is good. Mm-hmm. I hate tight spaces. I can't watch people like spelunking. Oh my god, it's like no, I can't watch it.
Yeah, and even
the monsters I could deal with. Things eating me, sure, but put me in a oh my god, no. Yeah, no, but no, the tight space, not be able to move. Oh my god. Oh.
See, I'm the type that so I want to go back. We used to go to Mammoth Cave like as family vacations, and we would go there because it was close enough for us that it was a day drive and all of the things, and we could just see different stuff. And I was like, I really want to go back to Mammoth Cave. I'm going to watch The Descent first. And it was just like, it just made the cave tours so much better. Cause I was like, oh, they could be over there. They could be. And we like saw spelunking crews that like came out that were just filthy because they'd been crawling through these super tight spaces. And it was just like, did you guys see any monsters down there? Are there any like cave dwellers down there? Are you running for your lives? How many people have you killed today? And it was just like,
where's the pool of blood that I can get in and just kind of come out?
I want that moment of just that's such a weird thing to say. I just like that for me does it. And I'm that kind of person that I will put myself through that so that when like watching Jaws for the first time when I was on vacation in a beach house, that's my life. Like that was my mom being like, oh yeah, let's just watch this movie. It's great. And then I was
let's go swimming.
There's a killer shark. What are you doing? She's like, well, tomorrow's our beach day. So like, we're going to be in the ocean all day. I'm like, what are we doing?
Oh man. Speaking of that, what's funny, you know, and maybe this doesn't happen often, but you know, they're talking about, oh, you go to the beach, you're in shallow water, you're fine. And then I just saw a reel recently, and it was like a tiger shark, but no, you just see it swim right up. And I mean, right up on the beach, almost out of the water, and then just turn right back around. And I'm like, oh my God, no, I'm not getting in the water ever again. Heck no.
No, if I we used to get out too far because my cousin and I would like, we had boogie boards. And so we would just hold on to those and like float out into the ocean, like insanely far the one time. And then we got really deep in trouble and we never did it again. But we got out so far that like we were feeling the fish swimming in the ocean. And like, as soon as I felt something like touch my leg, I was like, I'm gone. I'm out. We gotta go. We're pulling the plug. This is fun, but like back to the shore, man. Never like, and
where's Quint when you need him? Damn it!
Right, I need a bigger boat. Yeah, 100%. So, dope. I just ripped my headphones. This is awesome. Super great experience. There we go. We're back. See, and that's the beauty of like just treating this live. Like whatever. I'm human. It's fine. Yeah. So, we're getting to where my computer is like, hey, you're pushing my memory. So is there any fine? I'm gonna make this live again to remind people that they should go support Together Forever. Click the link that is going to be in the description. I'm also going to link them to your social media stuff. I'll probably Twitter because it's the easiest one to do. Is there anything else that people should know or be on the lookout or anything? Any closing thoughts from you today, Jay?
I would just say, you know, and I put in this, Together Forever is a pretty, like I said, special story to me. It was the first comic that I have produced. So to have this opportunity to work with Jeremiah again, to expand this story, to make it feel fresh, but also still kind of have the same, soul to it, and the gut punch to it that I feel like the ending is exciting. So people can help make, this book become a reality. I greatly appreciate it. And what I always like to put in my writing, what I like to read and kind of see is that, is seeing different perspectives. Like I kind of describe this as it's a terrifying tale of love and loss, but it proves that, proving that one person's nightmare is another person's miracle, So like one people, it's like anything you see in there, it's one person sees it as, this is terrible, what's going on. And, like maybe the end of the world, it's like, hey, all right, now I don't have to sit in traffic. This is awesome. Right. While other people are like, oh my God, my whole family was eaten, Another person's like,
no more lines of Kroger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Cool.
So
awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me and for doing this. And we will blast this, I'm sure, everywhere, all over the place. Make sure that you are following Jay so that you can be up to date on the future things. And then also follow the show because I'm going to be reviewing stuff as I get them. And probably once this Kickstarter hits its goal, which it's going to do with your help, and then we get it in our hands, I'll probably post a review here as well. Longbox Punk here on YouTube. Thanks for tuning. Thanks for tuning in and checking out the show, Jay. Man, I appreciate it. I have a feeling that this might not be our last conversation. So this is super fun for me, and I just appreciate you giving me the time.
No problem. I'll come on anytime.
Awesome. Great to hear. I'm going to hold you to it. All right, guys. We are out of here. Thanks so much. And go read some comics.